What's going on, guys? Welcome back to F1 22 for My Team Career Mode Season 1, Round number 4, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Now, before I get started with this one, let me just say that I'm sorry if I don't sound quite as excited and high energy in this episode. I usually do these on the weekend, well, just when my girlfriend and nobody else is at home, and at the moment it's about 20 past 10 at night and she's sleeping, so I'm not going to be super high energy here, but I wanted to just get this video done because I don't know when I'm going to get around to recording this otherwise. So yeah, I'm doing it now, so sorry about that, but don't worry, there's plenty of exciting stuff to go on in this race, so hopefully you'll just enjoy it as it is, as we actually sign our first secondary sponsor, which I think is to qualify in P12 or above. Now, I think it's P12. That's going to be a pretty big order. I think our best qualifying so far has been P17, was it, in Australia last time out. So that's going to be an interesting one. I'm not sure if the sprint counts as qualifying with that or not. I'm not really 100% sure, and I don't know how that works, but we'll see here, because this is of course our first sprint weekend as we actually go into a Pirelli hot lap thing here. And this one is actually just a kind of checkpoint one where you have to go through the checkpoints. Every time you go through a checkpoint you get a little bit of time added, and as you can see at the top there, the timer it keeps going down as you're going, and eventually you will run out of time, but the quicker you go, the quicker you get to the checkpoints, the more you can do and the more mileage you can do, which is on the left there. And as you can see on the right, you've got the gold, silver and bronze medals, and the last two events, which have been, the first one was an average speed event, the second one was a drift event, I've really struggled with them, and I've only just about managed to get bronze in those two. With this one though, went quite a lot better here. We actually end up getting the gold medal in this event, so a massive step up from the previous couple of events we've done in this game. So that's good, at least, because I was starting to think that these supercar hot lap events were just a waste of time and I wasn't really going to do very well, but alas, we do pretty decent this time. Looking at R&D, we actually have moved just a bit ahead of Aston Martin going into this race, so that's good. However, we're still a fair way now behind McLaren and the rest of the teams, and we are gonna, I think, put a new MGU-H, and I think we end up just putting the second kind of allocated lot of all the engine components other than the control electronics and the energy store, because you can only have 2 of those in a season without, before you go over your allocated amount and take penalties, whereas with everything else you have 3 of them. Gearbox is actually done a little bit different in this game than what they have been in the previous games, where you actually, instead of it just being like you take a new gearbox after every 6 races without a penalty, in this one I think you have 4 gearboxes, and you just take those throughout the season. If you need any more than that, you take grid penalties. So qualifying here, we have our first wet qualifying, our first wet session at all in this game actually. We had a couple of spits of rain right at the end of the Australian Grand Prix last time out, but didn't really make any difference at all because it was very, very small, just very small spits. But we have proper wet conditions here in qualifying for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. Sorry if you can hear my dog, he is shaking around in the background. He seems to always make an appearance in these videos. But yeah, so first wet session, we're on intermediate tyres, so it's not full wets, but definitely different here, and I was hoping that maybe I'd be able to do something decent here. Wet conditions, maybe it would spice things up. George Russell actually goes quickest in Q1, which is pretty crazy. Fernando Alonso in P2. We end up P21. So it's not the best qualifying from us here, so let's see how we go.
Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. An immense lap from Carlos Sainz yesterday puts him in pole position, and it's Charles Leclerc in P2. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Perez, Sir Lewis Hamilton and Russell, Fernando Alonso, Norris, Ocon and Daniel Ricciardo, Mick Schumacher, Magnussen, Guan Yu Zhou and Gasly, Tsunoda, Albon, Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll, Latifi, Bottas, Shaw and Liam Lawson. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We will soon find out.
So of course that qualifying session doesn't set up the main race, it sets up our first ever sprint race in F122 as we go to 5 red lights and away we go. It is not the best start from us, to be honest, and I actually had a bit of an issue forming up to the grid. I went too far, so it set me further back, but we are actually side by side with our teammate, both of us on the back of the grid here as we go for a big dive up the inside of Latifi into turn 1. It's 2x2 with the Aston Martins up ahead as well. Lots and lots going on at the start of this race, but we've managed to get ahead of our teammate and critically of Latifi, as Lawson, my teammate, is actually going for a bit of a move on Latifi behind as we are now sizing up Lance Stroll, and I think we're going to go for a bit of a dive here into this kind of hairpin corner. And it's been a decent enough start here, but Stroll gets a better run off the corner. But we should be quicker than the Aston Martin now. Like I said, my pace in quali was not good. I was really expecting to do a little bit better, but I have heard things about how the AI, as Latifi has a really strange look into that corner. That is not a place where you want to be making an overtake. That is an accident waiting to happen. But I have heard things about AI being quite strong on this track, a bit too strong, as Vettel up ahead locks up. We very nearly go into the back of his teammate, but we're just holding position right now in P20. Unfortunately, our teammate is still right at the back of the grid. Both of us having a bad quality as we dive on Stroll. It's a big dive bomb into the second to last corner, but we get the move done cleanly and on the track, and that is a great move there, as I think that is one of the Alfa Romeos of Zhou Guanyu coming into the pits just up ahead. As we have a look here at a battle, I think this is actually the battle with Zhou Guanyu, as he's battling with one of the Aston Martins here. And it wasn't one of the Alfa Romeos, it was the Williams going into the pits of, I believe, Alex Albon, because Latifi is behind us. But yeah, the Alfa Romeo and the Alpha Tauri battling it out here. It is, I believe, Pierre Gasly in the Alpha Tauri there, as these guys are still going too wide all through this section here. Massive battles going on right here, but Zhou has managed to get ahead, and now the Alpha Tauri will have to look in his mirrors at his teammate Valtteri Bottas. As we continue here, I think Stroll may have come in for a pit stop, or he's just fallen behind my teammate, because my teammate is now up into P20, and of course you've got, I think it was Alexander Albon coming into the pits. As further up ahead, the Hasses are trying to make their way up the grid. This is Mick Schumacher going for a move on Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren, but Ricciardo goes very deep into turn 1. I think there may have been a little bit of contact there between the two of them, but we'll have to see what that does there. But Mick Schumacher is past at the moment, as Pierre Gasly now having a big old fight with the other Haas of Kevin Magnussen, but Magnussen manages to, I think, stay ahead. I think Magnussen was already ahead before that battle happened. So yeah, good battles going on all throughout, and it keeps going here right about the halfway point in the sprint race now, as Lewis Hamilton trying to make his way back past Fernando Alonso after getting overtaken at the start. We've seen these two have a few battles so far throughout this season, and it continues here. Two of the older drivers on the grid, it has to be said, but Alonso, the oldest driver on the grid, manages to keep the position at the moment, but Hamilton is going to be putting lots of pressure on, and his teammate George Russell is right behind him. As we have a look now at, I think that is Yuki Tsunoda, as he goes very deep into that corner here, and we are just behind these guys. Vettel gets caught up. We manage to blast past Tsunoda, who made the mistake. We're past him up into P16 now, because quite a few cars have come into the pits with wing damage. A lot of cars making mistakes and crashing into each other in turn 1, as we have a little look on Vettel, but he locks up into the chicane. We actually had a look at a move, but we thought, nah, we're not going to make that move, but that was because he put his brakes on way too late, locked up into the chicane, and we managed to get up. So we're now up to P15, so this is definitely what we want to be doing in this sprint race. As we have a look at the front of the grid here, Carlos Sainz still leads the way from his teammate Charles Leclerc. Max Verstappen just about there in the background, and then you can just about see Perez a bit further back. But yeah, so far Carlos Sainz, currently the leader in the championship, still leading this sprint race. as we have a look now. Sergio Perez is out of the session. That is 2 retirements in a row for Perez. He had a mechanical failure last time out in Australia, and now he's retiring from the sprint race. Once again, it's an engine issue as he turns off and he just goes straight into the wall. I mean, he was out of the race anyway. We look at an onboard here. He was out of the race anyway, retiring due to a mechanical failure, but he just jumps over the curb here and then just pulls to the left to pull off the track, but then just goes straight into the wall, breaks his front right wheel. So I don't know what that was about. I guess just frustration from the Mexican, as Lewis Hamilton there still trying to make a move. Well, that might have actually been George Russell trying to make a move on Fernando Alonso, as the McLaren and the other Alpine of Esteban Ocon are battling behind. Lando Norris couldn't get the move done because of the yellow flag with Perez, but then Ocon outbraked himself into the chicane, comes back onto the track and makes contact with Norris. Now Norris will have to come in for a pit stop, but Leclerc actually managed to get into the lead of the race, and now he has bottled it into the first corner, brakes too late, locks up the wheel, locks up the tyre, and he goes straight on into the gravel trap, lets Sainz back through for the lead, and Max Verstappen now back up into second place, and that is how it would finish. Carlos Sainz would come through to win the first ever sprint race in F1 22. Max Verstappen takes second place, and Charles Leclerc would still hang on to third, but it was looking like a win for Leclerc here, first win of the season, but unfortunately he just had too much pressure on him and locked up into the first corner. We're going to come home in P12, so that's a great result from us in the sprint race. No points, but we are in a great place going into this race, because now we will line up for the main race in at least P12 at the worst, depending on if anyone else has grid penalties. But yeah, as we look here, P12 for us. I don't think it was a particularly great race for our teammate Liam Lawson. He's down in P21, so actually last place of the finishers. But let's see what the race has for us at Imola.
Welcome once again to the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo and Dino Ferrari. The clue is in the name. This is very much Ferrari home turf, and the locals will be out in force today to support their team in what we hope will be a magnificent spectacle of motorsport. On then to the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. 3.1 miles of track at Imola, featuring 19 turns, 9 to the right and 10 to the left. Remember that Imola differs from most other Formula One tracks as it's driven anti-clockwise. Let's hope nobody forgets that today. The exit from turn 18 will probably be the setup for many of today's overtakes, leading as it does into the longest straight on the circuit, and it's only DRS zone. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. It's Carlos Sainz in pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Hamilton, George Russell and Fernando Alonso, Ocon, Mick Schumacher, Joe and Pierre Gasly, Bottas, Shaw, Sebastian Vettel and Stroll, Latifi, Tsunoda, Kevin Magnussen and Daniel Ricciardo, Norris, Albon, Liam Lawson and Sergio Perez completes our grid. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you here with us today. But I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, how do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the run down into turn one, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
Alright, so I will show you at least the start of the formation lap, at the end of the formation lap for the race, but I didn't feel like I needed to show you that for the sprint race as well, because this is going to be a fairly long video for one of my videos, as it is with having qualifying, the sprint and the main race, as we get this time, well, we get a purple sector this time instead of a red sector which we had in the sprint race for lining up on the grid. It's P12 on the grid for us, our highest grid position so far. So let's see what we can do in this race. We go to 5 red lights for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, and it's lights out and away we go. And it's actually a pretty damn good start for us as we come alongside Valtteri Bottas as we go onto the main straight here. and there's a massive flock of cars just absolutely everywhere. We're having a look at Pierre Gasly, but we can't quite get anything done there. We actually do manage to just about get alongside him. Ocon and Zhou Guanyu are side by side up ahead. They're a bit slow. Zhou's a bit slow off the corner. Gasly's now coming back at us up the inside. We're going to try and hold it, but we're not going to quite get that done. Gasly just has the pace on us right there, and we're going to fall way back as we come into the hairpin. We're not going to be able to get a move done there either, unfortunately, and we're just going to continue on here up the road. Gasly right ahead of us, but we've got Valtteri Bottas right behind us. We got the jump on him at the start of the race, but yeah, couldn't quite manage to do anything there as we continue on up the hill. This is actually a corner that I get a really good exit out of the corner, which is quite surprising because AI in this game seem to get way better exits usually. And we're just going to continue on here in P11, so only 1 point. We're only one position away from points here, which is kind of ridiculous, to be completely honest with you. I did not expect to be anywhere near points in this race. So we continue on. Pierre Gasly up ahead, still Carlos Sainz crosses the line in first place. Zhou Guanyu goes into the pits because of a front wing change, so that's unfortunate for him, starting inside the top 10. As we have a look at the start again here from the front of the grid, or at least close to the front of the grid, Lewis Hamilton gets an amazing start and actually gets past Charles Leclerc into turn 1. So that's a great start for him in the Mercedes, considering the Mercedes is nowhere near really the Red Bull and the Ferrari pace. The two Aston Martins towards the back have a terrible start as Stroll goes into the back of his teammate and loses his front wing. So that's a great start for them. And yeah, we just continue on here. We're actually in P9 now because of a few cars coming in, but Valtteri Bottas is not going to make that easy for us. He goes for a move on the left and then he tries to cut back to the right, and he's now going to have the outside for the hairpin. And I mean, it's not a terrible place to be completely honest. You can get a good run out of the corner, but he's not going to be able to get it done. We're going to defend from him. As we continue on here, looking at the front of the grid, Carlos Sainz still leads the way from Max Verstappen, and I couldn't quite see who was in third place there. It was Lewis Hamilton, but I'm not sure. It looks like maybe Charles Leclerc has managed to get back into third place. I couldn't quite see, but it's fairly close at the top, but Carlos Sainz does lead the way. We're actually looking at the back of Esteban Ocon right now because he has started on the hard tyres. We're on the mediums, and we're just trying to size up and move on him down the main straight. Bottas is behind me, also having a look as we just dive on the brakes into the first corner, a little bit running over the curve there, but we keep two wheels on the track and manage to get that position. And we're just going to try and push away from Ocon now, because although he's a much quicker car on the hard tyres, he won't be as quick at the moment as we've just shown. And that goes for Valtteri Bottas too. He's also going to make that move around the outside of turn 1, but Ocon is going to fight it, and this is actually bringing Nicholas Latifi of all people into the fight in the Williams. He's now right behind these two and having a little look, so Ocon really slowing up the medium runners. As we continue on here, George Russell locks up into turn 1 and makes contact with one of the Alpines. I think that's Fernando Alonso, who is now going slow. I don't know if he had an issue before. Let's have a look here. He goes for the outside on Russell into turn 1, and yet Russell locks up, comes back onto the track, hits Fernando Alonso, and then Alonso just now going really slow. So I don't think he had a mechanical problem. I think he's just got that damage from Russell, and he's decided to retire the car because of that damage. So interesting for that to happen there. Zhou Guanyu is now out of the session. He had a great sprint race getting up to P9, and that actually brings out the safety car with him and Alonso both being stopped on track. But he had a great sprint race up in the top 10. Obviously, first lap had an incident, had to come in for a change, and now is out of the race with a mechanical failure. My cat is clicking the couch. That is not good. But eventually the virtual safety car ends and we continue on. We're now up to P7. With all the things that have been happening up ahead of us, we're in P7. We're legitimately in P7 now, which is honestly kind of crazy to think. But we are in P7, and we are actually holding that position. But if Battery Battery Bottas, yes, that's his name. If Valtteri Bottas manages to get past Ocon, he's going to come chasing down on us very quickly, but at the moment he's not able to get past him. He's having a bit of trouble. Carlos Sainz still leads the way, but on lap number 14 here, Max Verstappen in second place is going to go into the pits. He's going to take a pit stop, and Charles Leclerc is going to take the pit stop at the same time. So interesting there that Leclerc is doing the undercut potentially on his teammate when his teammate is leading the race, but yeah, weird for Leclerc to come in first in that scenario. Don't know if that was his call or the team's. We come in on, I think we actually came in on that same lap for our hard tyres, which we're going to hopefully go to the end of the race on. And as we look at the front here, the next lap around, Carlos Sainz takes his pit stop. He's now on the hard set of tyres, and he has still come out in the lead, so he's not got the undercut, been undercut by Verstappen, but it is close on track now for sure. As lap number 17, well, yeah, Valtteri Bottas was going to get past us pretty quickly after he dispatched of Ocon, and yeah, as soon as he got past him, or maybe it was that he came into the pits and Ocon carried on the hards, he caught up to us pretty quickly and is now passed. As we have a look at Sergio Perez trying to make his way back up the grid, of course, he started in last place after his DNF in the sprint race, and I think he might have actually taken some engine components as well, because it said penalty next to his name. He would have started last anyway, so I guess might as well take some engine components. He's making his way through the grid as Carlos Sainz locks up into one of the chicanes, one of the final chicanes here, and this brings Max Verstappen right into the fray, and Charles Leclerc's managed to catch up to these guys as well, and he's now going side by side with Verstappen. Verstappen turns defense into attack and goes for a move on Carlos Sainz for the lead. This is shaping up to be a good battle for the lead right here, as it's now Sainz and Verstappen side by side down the main straight. Leclerc looking in the background here. He's going to go for the inside. He's going to get ridiculously close to the wall. It's 3 wide down the main straight. I mean, it's quite a wide main straight here at Imola, but that's still terrifying stuff, as Leclerc is now battling with Verstappen. Sainz has been relegated to third. These guys are still battling it out, but it looks like Verstappen has just about managed to stay ahead of the 2 Ferraris. Well, he was in second. He's managed to get past Sainz and then keep Leclerc back and now be in the lead of the race. So it's looking good for Verstappen, but it's very much 2 Ferraris against 1 Red Bull, as we now get overtaken by Ocon very easily. He's now come in for his pit stop onto the medium tyres, so he has better tyres than us. He's a much quicker car than us, and yeah, we're not going to fight that at all. We're just going to have to let him go. As we now have a look at Charles Leclerc, he's now trying to go for a move back on the lead again. These guys, now that they've kind of got ahead, they are starting to get away from Sainz a little bit, but their battling is keeping Sainz definitely in the battle here, but Leclerc can't quite manage to get the move done at this point in time. You now have Esteban Ocon. He's now caught up to Valtteri Bottas up ahead of me, and Bottas took him a long time to get past Ocon earlier on. Ocon makes easy work of Bottas though and gets past him at first time trying. Sebastian Vettel not running in a particularly great position at the moment, thanks to not a great start and the sprint race and everything. He now has a big spin 360 into the gravel. It is not his day at all, or Aston Martin's day, and then an Alpha Tauri goes past and very nearly clips him. I think he might have actually clipped him, but what he does, he just gets a little bit too caught up on the first corner curb and then spins the car around as he goes for the right turn, and then I think it's Yuki Tsunoda comes barreling past here. We just have a look and he gets ridiculously close. I think there might have been the slightest bit of contact there between the two of them, so that was rather terrifying, but both of them managed to get away unscathed. I am now unfortunately dropping like a stone in this race as I get overtaken by Sergio Perez, try and dive up the inside, keep the position, but I don't have the pace of that Red Bull at all, and now I think we might be down to P10 now actually, so we are still scoring a point at the moment, but it's not looking good. As my teammate is also not looking good. I mean, he's battling with Alexander Albon here. Albon, of course, went out into the pits on the first lap. I'm guessing that Lawson's also had an incident to be now back here with him. So these guys are fighting it out. But Lawson does actually manage to get past Alex Albon in the Williams, but it's not looking like a good race for him. As we continue on further up the road, we have Pierre Gasly now battling with, I think this is Esteban Ocon. Wait, well, it must be, mustn't it? Because Alonso's out of this race. Yeah, Gasly and Ocon now battling, but that's just Ocon making his way through the field, trying that kind of different strategy to everyone else, going from hards to mediums instead of from mediums to hards. As Leclerc is still looking to get the lead of this race, and this time he's going to go around the outside and he's going to get it done before they get to turn 1. Charles Leclerc now leads the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. This is Ferrari home turf, and yeah, it's going to be big for him if he can convert this into a win, especially considering he hasn't won a race yet this season. So this will be big for Leclerc if he can do it, as we now have Lewis Hamilton behind us. We are in P10. We get a terrible run off that final corner, just get completely sideways, and well, I'm not really gonna fight this too much because I can't fight with a Mercedes. I really can't, and unfortunately that's going to drop me on lap 31 of 32, the second to last lap of the race. We're going to fall out of the points, and in the end we are going to finish P11, which is really unfortunate. We were so close to points, but we just can't quite get it done. But on the final lap of the Grand Prix, Max Verstappen is wanting that win. He wants the lead of the race. He wants the win, and he gets his elbows out and he gets very aggressive with Charles Leclerc on this final lap. Hasn't managed to get him through turn 1 there, but he is not giving up at all. He's going to fight Leclerc to the end here. Sainz has now caught up to these guys once again after he dropped back a little bit, but in the end it's not really going to matter. But Verstappen actually locks up into the final chicane. That lets Sainz have a little bit of a look, but unfortunately he gets a bit too held up and isn't going to be able to make a move on the Dutchman. But it's going to be Charles Leclerc who will come through this final corner. He hasn't won a race all season long. He's been comprehensively beaten by his teammate all season long, but he wins in Imola for Ferrari. Verstappen comes home second, Sainz very close in third place, and for some reason Sainz then crashes into the back of his teammate after the line and destroys his car. So that's interesting. He comes home with P3, but yeah, must have been quite frustrating for Sainz losing to his teammate. We come home in P11. It's still a good result from us considering where our car is on the R&D chart and on pace, but yeah, it's unfortunate we couldn't at least get 1 point there, but still P11 is definitely a good result for us.
It's a performance that our Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix winners can be justifiably proud of, and I'm sure there'll be celebrations tonight. So, Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
I think that smart tyre management on track and very smooth driving definitely assisted in their victory today. That combination meant they got the absolute maximum out of their tyres at all times.
Ferrari are at it again. An excellent performance at today's Grand Prix, and they're certainly a team that know what they're doing out there.
So there we go, Charles Leclerc wins the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. That is awesome to see from him because he hasn't won a race this season. So to see him on the top step finally, 4 races, technically 5 races in if you want to count the sprint as a race. He finally wins a race, so that is awesome. Puts him back into the... he's always still in the championship fight, but especially after the DNF in Australia, this is going to hopefully boost his confidence and put him up there with Verstappen and Sainz for the title. Verstappen comes home second, Sainz comes home third, so he will still lead the championship by a considerable margin here. George Russell comes home in P4, so it's a great result from him. Mick Schumacher in P5 as well, awesome result from the Haas. That is a really good showing from him, and Ocon manages to get up to 6 with that kind of alternate strategy. We finish P11, it's I think, was that 14 or something, for 16 for Lawson. I think it was P16, so yeah, not terrible considering, but yeah, not the best race for him. And all in all, it was a good race from us. It's just frustrating that we couldn't you know, convert that into points. There's no changes in the driver standings at all, positions wise, and there's no changes in the constructors either. So yeah, it's all as it was pretty much going into the next round, which is going to be Miami, which is going to be an interesting race because never driven Miami before, brand new track on this game, so I can't wait for that one. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.